In this video, we will look at subtracting decimals using a base 10 shorthand drawing. This standard extends students' previous experiences with adding and subtracting whole numbers and their understanding of place value with decimals. This standard requires that students utilize models, drawings, and strategies based on place value rather than relying on algorithms. We're going to look at 8 and 41 hundredths minus 3 and 97 hundredths. Before we begin, let's review the value of each piece when we are using a base 10 shorthand drawing to represent decimal numbers. So when we're using base 10 pieces with decimal numbers, we know that the flat is represented with a square like this, and that represents one whole. Again, when we're using the base 10 pieces to represent decimal numbers, when we look at the rod, that represents 1/10. And lastly, when we draw a dot or a circle like that, that represents 1/100th. Before we actually solve 8 and 41 hundredths minus 3 and 97 hundredths, let's estimate so that when we have our final answer, we can determine its reasonableness. So first, when I look at 8 and 41 hundredths, I recognize that 41 hundredths is kind of close to the halfway point, but still a little under it. So I can go ahead and say that 8 and 41 hundredths would be around 8. I'm just going to use whole numbers for rounding. For estimating, you're welcome to use other numbers if you'd like. And 3 and 97 hundredths, I know that's just 3 hundredths away from a new whole, so that's close to 4. And I know that when I have 8 minus 4, that would give me 4. So this lets me know that our answer should be around 4. So to begin, I'm going to go ahead and model 8 and 41 hundredths using the base 10 shorthand. So I will show 8 holes. And then 4/10ths. And then 1/100th for 8 and 41 hundredths. I'm going to switch colors just for the purpose of modeling it here. You don't have to do this when you use a base 10 shorthand drawing. Now I'm going to show 3 and 97 hundredths. That's made of 3 holes, 9/10ths, and 7 hundredths. So I'm going to show 3 holes, 9/10ths, and 7 hundredths. And now that I've modeled both of these numbers, I'm ready to subtract. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my hundredths here, because I know that if I need to do any ungrouping in this subtraction, I could always ungroup tenths to give me hundredths. I could ungroup wholes to give me tenths. So I'll always start here in the smallest place value. So I see that I need to take 7 hundredths away from this 8 and 41 hundredths. Right now I have just 1/100th showing right here, which I'm not able to take 7 hundredths away from that 1/100th. However, I know I have a lot more hundredths here in these 8 wholes and 4/10ths. So I'm going to go ahead and ungroup one of these tenths, and that will give me 10 new hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So again, I ungrouped a tenth so that I could have 10 hundredths to be able to subtract. Now I have a total of 11 hundredths here, and I can go ahead and subtract 7 hundredths from that. So let me go ahead and cross out 7 hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then down here, you have different ways you can keep track of this. Some people like to just put a check mark. They know that they've subtracted those 7 hundredths. Sometimes you can just draw a line through it. Whatever helps you best keep track of the fact that you have subtracted each of those 7 hundredths from the 8 and 41 hundredths. So I'm just going to cross them out with a line like that and move on to my tenths. So I know that I have to take 9/10ths away. I see here that I have 3/10ths remaining in the 8 and 41 hundredths. And I need to take 9/10ths away, which is obviously more than 3/10ths. However, I know that in these 8 holes over here, I have plenty more tenths. So I'm going to go ahead and ungroup one of these holes for 10 more tenths. So I'm going to put those 10 tenths up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've ungrouped a whole for 10 tenths. Now what I have up here is 13 tenths, and I can take 9 tenths away from 13 tenths with no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to cross out 9 tenths. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have subtracted 9 tenths from the 8 and 4100. So I'm going to go ahead and cross out. Remember, you could check it off, cross them out, whatever works for you. I'm just going to cross out all 9 tenths because I've subtracted them. And then lastly, I need to subtract 3 wholes. I have plenty of wholes here so that I can do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and cross off 3 of them. 1, 2, 3, and cross these off since I have subtracted them. So I can see now that I have successfully subtracted the entire amount, the 3 and 97 hundredths. So now I just need to look back and see, well, what's remaining, so I can determine the difference. So when I look here, I see that there are 4 wholes. When I look in the tenths, I see that there are 4 tenths. And when I look in the hundredths, there's actually 4 hundredths. So let me write down what that looks like here. So there are 4 wholes. We have 4 tenths, and we have 4 hundredths. So that lets me know that 8 and 41 hundredths minus 3 and 97 hundredths is 4 and 44 hundredths. And before I finish, I just want to double check, make sure that answer seems reasonable based on this estimate. I estimated that the answer would be around 4, and 4 and 44 hundredths is pretty close to 4. I do know that I rounded 8 down quite a bit, and I only rounded 3 and 97 hundredths up a little bit. So it makes sense that my answer is actually a little more than 4, but still close to 4. And so again, this is how we can subtract decimals using a base 10 shorthand drawing.